Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Short Circuit. I'm your host, Darryl Willis, Corporate Vice President of Energy and Resources at Microsoft, and I'm excited to have you join me as we dive into critical challenges and trends surrounding the global energy transition. In each episode, we hear from experts and thought leaders who share their insights and perspectives on the current and future state of the energy sector. In today's episode, I'm excited to feature another innovative climate technology startup from an underrepresented founder. The energy transition is real, it's important, and it's significant. And we know that working together in partnership with many companies, we can make a difference. I'd like to welcome Etosha Cave, co-founder and chief science officer at 12. Thank you for joining us today, Etosha. We're excited to have you join us, and we look forward to hearing more about what 12 is doing. Before we jump into a discussion about what you're up to and your solutions, I'd love for you to give us a little bit of a background on yourself, who you are, where you're from, and how you got interested in this space.
Yeah, thanks so much, Darryl. Really excited to be here and talking about our technology. So my background is that I grew up in Houston, Texas, and I grew up in a neighborhood that was adjacent to an oil and gas waste site. And that site was discovered when I was a teenager. And there was a class action lawsuit and the EPA was involved. It was one of these early cases of environmental injustice. And even though my family wasn't directly affected, involved in it, because we were upstream of where the waste was discovered, but I had lots of friends and neighbors who were involved in this, incident that had gotten national attention. And so that made waste and the mission to create a cleaner environment very personal for me. So I went on to study engineering and science and math because I loved those subjects and it was my passion. And I said, how can I take these skills and subjects that I love and have it support the environment and support humans living in a way that is not detrimental to either the environment or to themselves? And so I went to graduate school at Stanford and I studied the early stages of a technology that would convert waste carbon dioxide into new usable molecules. And so we engineered metal catalyst to do this conversion, and seeing how powerful this could be, that you could make industrially relevant molecules from carbon dioxide and water using metal catalyst and electricity, it really made me think, like, hey, can we scale this up? Could this be something that could take CO2 waste on a large industrial scale and make carbon neutral, carbon negative fuels and products and materials that we already use and love today?
I actually spent most of my life in Houston, so your story resonates with me. And having worked in the energy sector for a while, I know that a lot of the materials that are created in the downstream business, and a lot of the materials that we use in society, like plastics and textiles and paints and adhesives, etc., all rely on petroleum products as building blocks. But the work you're doing, as I understand it, is unique and probably unknown to most people, even across the energy industry, which is why I'm glad you're here on our podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about 12 in this business of the Opus system for industrial photosynthesis? And how does that work? And I'd love to hear your take and your view on the importance of replacing petrochemicals with electrochemicals.
Yeah, absolutely. So we call our process industrial photosynthesis because in a lot of ways, it's the same chemical reaction that a tree or a plant is doing. And so trees, take CO2 from the air, take water from the ground, and they use energy in the form of sunlight to convert that CO2 and water molecule into sugars for their own growth and development. And then they also release oxygen, which humans use. At 12, we're doing carbon transformation where we're very similar to plants, where we're taking carbon dioxide and water, and we're using energy in the form of electricity. And that could be any form of renewable electricity. It could be solar, wind, or even a carbon-free electrical source, such as nuclear. And we're converting that CO2 and water molecule into industrial chemicals for industrial growth and development. And we also release oxygen as well. Now, these chemicals that we make, these carbon-based chemicals and compounds, end up being fuels and materials that already exist in industry. And in fact, we made lenses and sunglasses in conjunction with a company called Pangea. We made a component in Tide detergent with Procter & Gamble. And we made a car part in conjunction with Mercedes-Benz and Daimler. And again, there's, the same car part, the same Tide detergent, same lenses and sunglasses you would make from petroleum products. We can make it with our electrochemical process and continue to grow these materials and these products, grow our economy, but while making products that have a lower carbon footprint. And so right now we're scaling up that process, and our Opus system is the core technology that will we make units of the Opus system, and we add units to our air plants, as we call them, and we deploy them, and we do end-to-end CO2 conversion into these new molecules. And our first molecule that we're scaling up is actually jet fuel. So imagine a world where you can fly back home to Houston, where I'm also from, and you can do so using jet fuel that's made from CO2 instead of being pulling that carbon out of the ground to then use it in a jet to fly where you want to go. And so, we're really excited about creating a world in which we can more and more use electrochemical processes. We can more and more leverage the electricity that's coming on the grid, that's more and more renewable. And we can make these carbon compounds and chemicals and molecules that we already use and love today and start to remove CO2 from going into the atmosphere.
Wow. Just the whole notion of being able to reimagine jet fuel is quite extraordinary. The innovation is absolutely incredible and exciting. And the fact that you can make electrochemicals from air instead of having to rely on traditional petrochemicals extracted from oil and gas is it's amazing and exciting. Switching gears a little bit, Etosha, Microsoft has been in the news a lot lately, in particular around generative AI and high performance compute, quantum computing, and all that it's doing to accelerate material science and the use of even the use of generative chemistry and new discoveries that could help accelerate the energy transition. I'd love to get your take and your perspective on AI technology in your work and the role you see it playing in your work, but overall in technology as we look forward.
Yeah, I am a strong fan of AI technology, and especially at the intersection of physics and new materials and kind of building our physical world and making optimized, smarter, better products. And at 12, we've been a company for a little under 10 years. And when we first got started, the AI that we know today was not quite ubiquitous and around, but there was a precursor to that, which is basically statistical extrapolation and using data sets and kind of doing some early machine learning. And so we, from the very beginning, were using those types of techniques to really streamline our data and really compact the number of experiments we need to do in order to understand how these variables that we were changing with our reactor would matter. And so it was a way to be more efficient in how we do research and development. Now that there's much stronger and new types of machine learning and AI technologies is on the field, we're now saying how can we integrate that more into our R&D effort and accelerate and mine all this data that we've had over the past 10 years, where we've just done tons and tons of experiments and changed the recipe of our core electrode and change the reactor conditions, and like what patterns and trends can we see from that data that a computer can find that maybe it's harder for a human to see. So we're really excited about using these tools. There's also a kind of macro level thing as well, where because AI uses electricity, there's now a larger awareness around our need to expand and increase the amount of electricity on our grid. And I think we can ride those coattails of AI leading, companies like Microsoft saying like, hey, we want to build more data centers. We want to do that in a clean way. And so we want to open up new nuclear sites. We want to deploy more solar and wind and have it such that we have an abundance of electricity on the grid. And companies, such as Microsoft that have this, this big reach can say that message and get it through, and we can come along and we don't need the high reliability that a data center would need. We could take intermittent electrical supplies, but because that base load is there and it'll be cleaner, we can leverage that electricity deployment and leverage the opportunity that will create of this abundance of an electrical grid. We're not there yet, but the conversations are happening, and the momentum's building up to get to that future where we have an abundance of electricity that can be used to make clean fuels, to have AI be integrated more and more into our lives and help us make better products.
Fantastic. I want to ask you a question that I should have asked you at the very beginning, kind of off script a little bit, but why is the company called 12?
Yeah, 12 is an homage to carbon-12, which is the atomic mass unit of the common isotope of carbon on Earth. Over 99% of the carbon on Earth is carbon-12, so it's an homage to that.
Got it. Okay, thank you for sharing that. So, Etosha, I'd like to pivot a little bit and talk about the importance of representation, diversity, and inclusion. And speaking from my own experience, I a long time ago decided to become a geophysicist, and I decided to become a geophysicist because I saw a geophysicist. I met one that looked like me, and it had a huge impact on me. When we talk about sort of new companies that are forming and doing innovative things like your companies and the funding that they're having access to, the numbers aren't really that good. A recent McKinsey study on U.S. venture capital showed that funding among Black and Latino founders, for example, is less than 1.5%. Funding among women organizations is less than or around 1.9%. And if you're Black and brown or a woman, the funding levels are 0.1%. I'd love for you to share any experiences you've had as you've been on this journey with 12 and best practices that you've learned around being an underrepresented leader and founder of a company along the way that could potentially be helpful to other founders.
Yeah, wow, those numbers are really, startling and they're very sobering to remind that there's such little representation in this field of funded companies. I would say from my experience, there's this interesting dichotomy that happens of having really high visibility by being an underrepresented founder, but also having high invisibility. And what I mean by that is, I think a lot of people in the early days when we were kind of just getting started, because there weren't that many Black females at conferences that I was going to and so forth, that in a lot of ways, like me being a Black female kind of stood out. But at the same time, it was sort of that identity stood out, not me as an individual. And I think a lot of times, there's a handful of times I've been in a room and people have been talking about 12 and then realized that I was one of the co-founders. So I think it's like, again, that identity just stood out, but not like me as an individual. Now, as we've raised more money and we've become more known within the field, that has changed a bit. But it certainly created this weird sense of being known, but yet unknown at the same time. And another thing that I found that has been really helpful is just really leaning on mentors and champions that present themselves. And a lot of times, when I heard the word mentor in my early career, I often thought of someone much older than me or someone much further along in their career. But I've had a lot of amazing mentorship from my peers. And in fact, I have two co-founders, and one is Nicholas Flanders, who was in the business school at Stanford. And he had started a company prior to 12 and had taken that company from like C to Series B. So he had a ton of knowledge that he could bring to me and my other co-founder who were new to starting a company. And he could, share his experience, and we could really learn from that. And he's also a really great champion too. Like he's very much like, Tasha, you go out there and you represent the company, or, you can do this, or he gives really great feedback. And my other co-founder, Kendra, she and I were in the same PhD lab together. So we come from more of a technical background. And so there was still a lot of encouragement from Nicholas to, have us be seen as the leaders and like, go out and represent the company. So it was really valuable. I mean, I think it's been really great having a wonderful set of peer groups that can help navigate those tough challenges and moments when you're like, wait, did they just say that just because I'm a Black woman or something else? And, having an ally there that could really help get through those tough moments. And I should also say, like, starting a company, no matter what identity group you are from, is challenging. It is very tough. There are high highs and low lows. And so having people there that can help you is key. It does become a bit harder, I think, when you are underrepresented. I think founders from overrepresented groups can kind of find their tribe a little bit easier. So it does make it harder, but it's certainly doable. And I think this is a golden window, golden opportunity for all founders, but certainly underrepresented founders, to go out and change those numbers, and let's get more people starting companies if that's what you choose to do.
Great, solid advice. Thank you. One last question in this vein. What more could energy companies or technology organizations like Microsoft do, could be doing to help innovative companies like 12, Etosha?
Well, I will say Microsoft has helped us in a way it's very powerful, and I'd love for other companies to follow suit. So Microsoft partnered with Alaska Airlines to be our partner, our offtake partners, for our first set of jet fuel. So we're building our first plant in Washington State, and the way Microsoft is in this deal is that any Microsoft employees that flies on an Alaska Airlines flight that has the fuel that we're making, Microsoft gets that credit. Basically gets to meet their carbon goals of offsetting all the carbon that they've emitted since the company started. Mm-hmm. And so that has been really helpful for us to be able to go out and finance and build our first plant, knowing that there's a partner that will offtake the fuel and offtake what they call the Scope 3 credit, which is the main piece that Microsoft is purchasing. So if more companies follow suit, we can start to build more and more plants and really start to make a dent in the jet fuel market and have more sustainable aviation fuel that's made from electricity and CO2.
My last question, and thank you so much for your time, but my last question for you is really around, as you think about what's next for 12, what are you most excited about for the future of your company? And what are you most excited about when you think about the energy transition?
Yeah, so in the near term, like 2025 is going to be a very exciting year for 12. We are hyper-focused on scaling, and we have all the pieces have come together. We have the financing, we have the offtake agreement. We're building our first plant in Washington State. And so we're really excited about bringing that all together, executing on that, opening up that plant, starting to do our first flight. And then having that first plant be the first of many, and start to design and find sites and then execute on our next 10 plants. And so really create this world and continue on the trajectory where we're revolutionizing these core materials, not just fuels, but also, textiles and polymers and things that we already use and love. Like, let's make them from CO2 and just, have this conversion of clean energy, advanced materials, and cutting edge technology really come together to create a sustainable future.
Folks, this brings us to the end of this episode of the Short Circuit. And I'd like to thank you, Etosha. I should have been referring to you as Dr. Etosha. It's been a pleasure having you on with us today for a very interesting, provocative, inspiring, and hopefully impactful and transformational conversation about your company and what you're doing at 12. We are here to help, and we are here to partner, and we're excited to be on this journey with amazing companies like 12. And to our audience, I'd like to thank you for joining us. Until next time, we'll see you then, and we'll continue having conversations with thought leaders and innovative technology experts like Etosha, who are really driving faceted, complicated solutions into the industry and into the world that will truly get us to net zero by 2050 or soon. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.